In the heart of West Africa, where the sun scorches the land and the desert creeps ever forward, a story of resilience and determination has unfolded that captured the imagination of the entire world. Burkina Faso, a nation too often in the headlines for hardship, insecurity, and poverty, suddenly became the center of global admiration for an extraordinary environmental achievement. On June 21, 2025, something remarkable happened. In the span of just 1 hour, over 5 million trees were planted across the country, a feat so ambitious, so daring, that many dismissed it as impossible. And yet, the people of Burkina Faso, under the leadership of Captain Ibrahim Traoré, proved the doubters wrong. What unfolded on that day was more than a campaign against desertification. It was a symbol of hope, an act of unity, and a demonstration of what can be accomplished when ordinary people come together with a shared purpose. The idea of planting 5 million trees in a single hour might sound like a fairy tale, but the campaign was carefully planned. This was not simply a publicity stunt, it was the continuation of a tradition rooted deeply in the national consciousness. Burkina Faso has been celebrating National Tree Day for years, an annual reminder of the country's commitment to fighting desertification. June 21st was the 7th observance of this day, but unlike previous years, this one carried an unprecedented goal: to shatter records and prove to the world that Africans are not passive victims of climate change, but active leaders in the struggle for a sustainable future. On that morning, as the first light broke over the Sahel, the energy was palpable. Communities from every province mobilized. Schools closed their classrooms so children could participate. Farmers paused their work in the fields. Government ministries turned the day into a national mission. Trucks loaded with seedlings crisscrossed the countryside. Young people carried bundles of saplings on their shoulders. Elders offered their blessings, recalling a time when the land was greener, when rivers flowed more freely, when the forest still whispered with life. The campaign had a theme that resonated deeply: medicinal plants, a source of health and climate resilience for communities. This was not just about reforestation, it was about survival, well-being, and cultural heritage. The choice of trees was deliberate. Medicinal plants are part of the traditional knowledge systems of West Africa. For centuries, healers have relied on them to treat illness, strengthen bodies, and soothe spirits. But as deforestation, overgrazing, and climate change have eroded ecosystems, these plants have become scarce. By planting millions of them, Burkina Faso was not only restoring forests, but also safeguarding the health of its people. Imagine the sight: vast stretches of open land transformed into nurseries of hope, where communities bent over the earth, digging, planting, watering, and patting down the soil around delicate new roots. The air buzzed with activity, with laughter, with determination. The task was enormous, yet the spirit was even greater. The campaign's scale was unprecedented, but it did not emerge out of nowhere. It was part of a long trajectory that goes back to the days of Thomas Sankara, the revolutionary leader who ruled Burkina Faso in the 1980s. Sankara, often called Africa's Che Guevara, was deeply committed to environmental causes. He understood that political independence meant nothing without ecological stability. During his short time in power, he launched massive reforestation campaigns, mobilized young people to fight desertification, and made tree planting a civic duty. He once declared, "We cannot carry out development if we destroy our environment." His vision left a deep imprint on the national psyche. Decades later, Captain Ibrahim Traoré has revived this Sankara spirit, positioning himself as a leader not only in politics, but in ecological stewardship. In many ways, this campaign was more than a battle against the desert. It was also a battle against despair. Burkina Faso lies in the Sahel, one of the most fragile ecological zones on Earth. The Sahara Desert expands southward each year, swallowing villages, farmlands, and water sources. Rainfall patterns have become erratic, leaving farmers at the mercy of long droughts followed by devastating floods. Livelihoods have been destroyed, forcing young men into migration or into the hands of insurgent groups. In such a context, planting trees is not just an environmental gesture, it is an act of resistance. Each tree is a shield against soil erosion, a sponge to capture rainwater, a promise of shade in a scorching land. Each tree is also a silent declaration: we will not surrender to the desert. But how do you plant 5 million trees in 1 hour? The logistics were staggering. Months before the event, nurseries were established across the provinces. These nurseries produced millions of seedlings, acacias, baobabs, moringas, and other species resilient to Sahelian conditions. The United Nations Development Program joined in, providing support and thousands of seedlings. Civil society organizations rallied their members. Traditional leaders encouraged their communities. Radio broadcasts and posters spread the word. On the day itself, it was as if the entire nation synchronized its heartbeat. From the capital of Ouagadougou to the remotest villages near the Malayan and Nigerian borders, groups assembled with seedlings in hand, waiting for the signal to begin. And then, as the clock struck, the campaign started. Holes were dug, saplings were gently placed into the ground, water was poured, soil was patted down. Hands, small and large, calloused and soft, worked side by side. Children planted next to their parents, soldiers planted next to farmers, teachers planted next to their students. In just 60 minutes, 5 million living organisms were returned to the earth, setting down roots that will one day grow into mighty guardians of the land. The sheer scale of this synchronized action was breathtaking, a kind of environmental choreography unlike anything the world had seen before. The impact of this effort cannot be measured only in numbers. Of course, 5 million trees are impressive, but the deeper significance lies in the psychological shift it represents. For decades, African nations have been portrayed as helpless victims of environmental crisis, waiting for foreign aid or outside solutions. This event flipped that narrative. It showed a poor, landlocked country facing terrorism and economic struggles, choosing to lead by example. It showed that with collective will, even the most daunting challenges can be confronted. It gave ordinary Burkina citizens a sense of agency, of pride, of ownership over their environment. One cannot overlook the symbolic importance of Captain Traore's presence. Young, charismatic, and often controversial, he stood not just as a political leader, but as a figure of inspiration. He reminded the people that this was their land, their future, their fight. His government declared that 2025 would be a year of reforestation, aiming for 20 million trees by the end of the year. 5 million in 1 hour was just the beginning. Across provinces, new nurseries of medicinal plants would be established, at least 2 hectares each, fenced and irrigated to ensure survival. This was not a one-off event, but part of a long-term ecological strategy. The story quickly spread beyond Burkina Faso. International media outlets covered the achievement, environmental organizations praised it, and social media buzzed with images of children planting trees under the scorching sun. People around the world were astonished that a country with limited resources could achieve what wealthier nations have not dared to attempt. Comparisons were made to India's mass tree planting drives, but many noted that Burkina Faso's campaign was uniquely community-driven, rooted in grassroots mobilization rather than top-down directives. It was not just an environmental act, but a cultural and spiritual one, connecting people to their heritage and to their land. Critics, of course, raised questions. Would all 5 million trees survive? Was it realistic to expect that such a massive planting could be maintained? After all, planting is one thing, but nurturing is another. Trees need water, protection from animals, care in the fragile first years. Without follow-up, many saplings could wither and die. Yet defenders of the campaign pointed out that survival rates had been considered, that fencing, irrigation, and community involvement were part of the plan, and even if not all survived, the sheer scale meant that millions would. More importantly, the campaign sparked a mindset shift. It taught children the value of planting. It reminded communities of their responsibility. It reignited pride in local traditions of stewardship. One of the most touching aspects of the campaign was how it brought generations together. In rural villages, elders told children stories of the forests of their youth, when lions still roamed freely, when rivers were deep enough to swim, when the land was fertile. These stories gave context, making the act of planting a tree not just about the future, but about honoring the past. In cities, young professionals who usually spend their days behind desks picked up shovels and reconnected with the soil of their homeland. Across the country, there was a sense of rediscovery, that Burkina Faso is more than its hardships, that it has within itself the strength to rise. Environmentalists across Africa watched with admiration, seeing Burkina Faso as a model for the continent. The Sahel region, stretching from Senegal in the west to Sudan in the east,